and welcome to a brand new episode of the Nitro RX podcast. I am one of your hosts, Thiemo and Nabila, and I'm joined, as always, by my brilliant co-host, Nabila. How are you today?
I am doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing pretty good, thank you. A little bit exhausted after such a busy weekend of racing. Not just Nitro RX being cheeky and adding another round just for Groupe E on the Friday night, but then having a sprint weekend for F1 on top of that. It's just left, right, and centre. So, but I'm glad we're back here with Nitro and can get our teeth sunk into this.
Absolutely. I think it was a pretty solid weekend all around for motorsport. Nice to see some familiar faces in both F1 and Nitro getting on the podium this weekend.
Yeah, it very much. We keep saying that the Nitro RX season this year keeps building and building, and there's something new and exciting there. But this is the first round where I thought, okay, now we're in the meaty part of the season. We seem to be getting down to business a little bit now. Not saying that all that
Yes,
nice newness is over, but we're getting to that point maybe where we'll get a mixture.
absolutely. And I think what's interesting is this is the first weekend in both rounds where we've had a winner that's won before.
I know it's kind of we wanted to will that along as far as we could, kind of like F1 2012 style, and just it naturally it couldn't last as long as we wanted it to, which was the whole season. But we were a bit greedy there.
Absolutely. But I think we can get straight cracking with what happened this weekend.
Yeah, what are your initial thoughts then? Let's get that straight off the bat.
So I think my initial thoughts were I was very happy to finally see Conor Martel and Chris Meek on the podium this weekend. They were both on the My Energy Excite team, which was a little bit weird because I know Conor Martel, he drives for the Vermont Sports Car,
He's
so
kind
he
of
was
in
under
both.
the umbrella. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was interesting. So that's a pretty solid weekend. We said we wanted an Excite podium and a My Energy podium, and we managed to, so can't complain. And
Nice.
then obviously another win for Travis, which it's nice to see him not being super dominant in the US, but still being like, I know what I'm doing. I built these tracks. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he's definitely just there, like plodding along and saying, you can't forget about me. It's still my championship.
No, it's very much. I mean, we'll get to the championship landings a bit later on, but for Trevor, it's good that he is still there. He's still in the fight. It's still very doable, and in such a competitive season. And like you say, if he was going to do well anywhere, at least it makes sense. It's on home turf in America, and he hasn't dominated like you say, but he's done what he needs to do, and it's very consistent. And again, Connor and Chris, you saying they wanted something for Excite, and then Sod's Law, we get two at once. So like, we're not complaining, but now I feel like we've got to be careful for the next couple of rounds because I don't want us to have gotten too much too soon on that one. So hopefully that's not a bad sign for things to come.
Absolutely. And I think, yeah, I think it was just all around a pretty solid weekend. And I think Phoenix delivered definitely. So that was nice. I think all of the rounds are delivering, which is great. But what about you? What were your initial thoughts for the
Well, yeah,
weekend?
you're saying that it keeps delivering in different ways from round to round. And a big part of that for me is just seeing this kind of Avenger style roster of drivers just circling in and out every week. You kind of have your core people, your Thors and your Captain Americas, but then you have these kind of, for lack of a better term, your B and your C list heroes that people might not know so much about coming in and joining the fray a bit. And we had that this weekend with two drivers from NASCAR, which was just fun because we haven't had that before in Chase Elliott and Austin Cindric. And both did pretty well. They kind of just put their foot to the floor and just performed out the box. I mean, it's always intriguing to see what drivers from different disciplines are going to be like coming into it for the first time because again, we saw Jensen for the one round in Minnesota and it wasn't immediate, but that's very different to NASCAR again. But it's interesting where these differences can come and go from it. And then, of course, you had
Absolutely.
BJ Baldwin come into it and Amanda Sorensen, who is monster trucks normally. So, again, completely different again. And then nothing even remotely
Yeah.
motorsport related in Demi Bagby. She came in and she's from the gymnastics world and is just looking for a career change, a bit like Leticia. So it's a bit different. It's a bit fun, and at the very least with Demi, we got her to teach Street Bike Tommy how to do a handstand, which that was premium content for Nitro RX. I'll say that much, but it was you don't get that in other motorsports. I don't feel like.
No, I think that's it. They're bringing in the fun. They're bringing in all these different faces, and they can. Do you know what I mean? It's nice to see these one-off rounds where people are just showing up and being like, "Do you know what? I want to give it a crack." and it's not interfering in the championship, but it's still bringing as much excitement as needed for these events. And you don't get that in other motorsports. In rallying, you can obviously have that kind of thing because it's a massive list, and I guess Nitro and Rallycross as a whole allows that kind of bringing in different faces for each round because it's not a specific lineup like IndyCar or F1 and things like that. You can't really swap out racing drivers because that's just permanent structure. But it's always fun. Yeah, unless you're but like, yeah, that's a sore topic, that one. But I think it's cool to just have that fun and that differentials of, yeah, I think it's just bringing all that different.
It's that time with Nitro Circus. I feel like they can justify it as well. Like,
yeah,
if you had someone, I'm trying to think of what would even be a close comparison. I guess maybe Extreme E, but even then, you'd still expect them to have some kind of racing background. You wouldn't expect someone like Letitia or Leah, for example. Like Leah, she's great, but again, and you have a couple of the young people in there, like Clara Anderson, for example, but you still wouldn't be expecting them to just appear immediately and jump in just for one round. You'd expect them to be there for at least a few. Whereas this lot, they're like, I come from a completely different world, but there's a link here from Nitro RX to Nitro Circus, and we all know Travis, and we can all just kind of work in there. It's a very casual, laid back thing. The entertainment side is there, but the racing is also very hard and very fair at the same time for the most part. We'll get to that later. And it just, there's no pressure. It's just kind of come in, see how you do, have a nice time. We'd love to have you back. And again, you saw, what was it in, where were we? Sweden. That was it. Yes, there were Swedes everywhere. And we saw Johan Kristoffersson come in for one round, had a bit of fun, and then off he went. And it's just nice to have this little thing. And like you say, it doesn't impact the championship, but it just doesn't impact it negatively. It just adds to that extra thing because you think in such a competitive season where we have had so many different winners so far, if someone like him comes in for a round or someone new comes in, who knows how good they're going to be because we don't know for certain. How's that going to upset the apple cart for everyone else? And how much more important is it for those people who are there every round to be extra consistent?
Absolutely. And I think it's just bringing that different layer almost because it is creating competition for these people. Like when, oh God, his name slipped my mind. Michaela's teammate from Extreme E. You just said the name.
Yes, Johan
Kristoffersson. There we go. When he came in, he still challenged. Like, I'm pretty sure he ended up on the podium in Sweden. So, like, they are coming in and they are, like, really giving it some. And they're getting points. And that's just making the championship drivers more hungry to just push and do their best. And I think that brings us swiftly on to that awesome doubleheader this time around with that extra round under the lights on Friday night. Like, what a surreal experience. Like, they have the opportunities. Yeah. I mean, a night F1 race always looks cool. And I think bringing Nitro out into the dark and, throwing some lights on these cars and saying, all right, go race.
I just love the fact that they could decide that with practically no notice for anyone and just pull it off. And it looked like it was meant to be there in the first place. And again, like you say, F1 night race looks good. Great idea to steal and put on there. And if anything, makes me want them to have a couple more there. I wouldn't mind a couple extra there because it just is so different as well because you saw the lighting from the drones that were flying around. You can see everything, but then you've got the in-car cameras and it's just pitch black. And how the hell are they doing what they're doing there? It just shows that extra level of skill that I feel like in F1 you don't get that as much because it is just so well lit there because again, I don't want to take something away from one and not the other, but you know what I'm trying to get at there. It's very different, and you feel like you need to be extra on it in F1. I feel like just because of if you're going to crash like Andreas did on Sunday in F1, that's going to be more serious. I feel like I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just get that vibe there. So I feel like you need that extra lighting, whereas in Nitro you can get away with that more, and you can have that darkness, and it's just more. Do you get what I'm trying to get at? I feel like I'm just rambling.
I think it's more of the aspect of it's like a night rally stage where they go and do a super special stage or you're going out in the forest at night. it just brings that whole different feel, and we don't need the lights. Do you know what I mean? Like F1, it's a circuit. They have the opportunity to be able to pre-light all of it, but this is coming and going. Like they're building these tracks every single weekend for what their purpose is, and then they're being taken down like 2 days later.
You took my thoughts and articulated it perfectly there, so I'm glad one of us is paying attention.
And so there's no really I'm now getting tongue-tied. There is not really a requirement for having permanent light structures there because the cars can deal with it, but also it creates that second layer of excitement and difference, because now you're taking something that people can usually see where they're going and throwing it in, saying you can only use the headlights to see what you're doing. And that always made things very spicy in super special stages and also in night rally stages. And I think it did the same that night, because it's always interesting to see in night driving how much of a difference some drivers like have and how much extra they can do in the dark than they do in the light. Like you'll notice that podium was a little bit different, and it does usually tend to be the case that the drivers that are more committed and have solid notes at night, it tends to not be the regular drivers that you would see in the top. So you had Conor Martel on top that night, you had Andreas Bakkerud, you have Travis. Travis comes from a line of having done night stages in rallying. He's probably going to be pretty solid in that environment and that atmosphere. And then Bakkerud, I think he's also done a little bit back in the day of rallying once or twice. He has to have, let's be real. He's probably done everything at some point in his life. And I think Connor came into his own at night, but there's other drivers that probably really, really struggled with the darkness.
I wonder if part of that as well was down to the fact that it was an official extra round, but there was less pressure, I feel like, maybe because it was just Groupe E doing a whole weekend of racing in one night. There was no one else. There's no kind of massive gaps between the different qualifying and the races and all these kinds of things. It was just all of them going for it. It was kind of not a lot messing about in the evening, but that kind of feel and vibe to it was more casual. So maybe he thrives better under that environment. Because, like we say, he's been having a tough time lately, and and for you particularly, he's had enough of a character building. He's had too much character building lately, and this was good to, when the pressure was maybe slightly more off, it worked for him. And like you say, 3 drivers on the podium Friday night, 3 completely different ones come Sunday. And that's exactly what you want to see for a top level of motorsport like this.
Yeah, see, I don't know if it takes away pressure. I think it adds it, because now you're throwing in an extra round that people hadn't accounted for and calculated, and they're like, oh, I can really make a significant difference this weekend. I have to try super hard. I think
maybe he doubled down on the pressure and he's thrived extra hard. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. There's like almost two minds about that, because it can be both. I mean, personally, if it were me and there was an extra round, I'd be like, all right, there's extra pressure. It depends if there is dropped round scores or not in this, and I don't remember.
I don't think
so. That's going to be a whole nother search of like if it is, and I apologize for not knowing that.
I don't recall coming across that on my research, so I think you're safe for now, at least. So if one of us is going down, we're both going down with that one.
But I think it's just creating that difference. So yeah, I guess it's 1 and 2 really, depending on whether you sat there and go, oh, I really have to prove myself because there is this extra round and I'm getting this extra chance to fight for it, or if it did kind of like relax it. As of course we mentioned that there's repeat winners. Travis was the first one that night before we went into the action on Sunday. Well, Saturday,
qualifier as well, which was nice for him, his second time this season, and Oliver Ericsson was the top qualifier going into Sunday, who ended up in second place in the podium. So it's again showing this nice kind of consistency, and Oliver Ericsson first time for him as well, which again nice to see that freshness keep coming. So even if we're not getting new winners this weekend, we still got new in that respect. So it's nice that we keep pushing that. And He did an absolutely brilliant weekend there, because it was not that we don't know who these drivers are when we're watching them, but it's used some of the cars like Fraz. He's very easy to identify which car he is when you're watching it. But then when you have someone like Oliver Ericsson, who he's not been up there as much, you're suddenly like, oh, looks familiar, can't remember exactly. Oh, that's great, that's Ericsson. Okay, and you're learning a bit more as you go there. So it's great that you then have this spread, and they're all getting their moments in the spotlight. So then they're easily recognizable, not just for casual fans, but for the more diehard people as well.
Absolutely. And I think we had two repeat winners, obviously, with Larson winning on Sunday and Travis winning on Friday, but we also had new people on the podium. Connor, first
Yeah,
time on the podium for him. Chris Meek, first time on the podium for him. Ericsson, first time on the podium for him. Like, it was exciting to see all of these different people. And I still think there's potential to see even more different people come out with the podium this year. No
especially if we get
single
some
three
one-off people.
drivers. Yeah, and no single three drivers are going to continue to be on the podium consistently, which is nice.
I just very much am of the idea that in January we're going to be in Canada, and there's more of an off season for everything else motorsport wise. So I'm just going to say it now. Loeb gets bored. He comes over to Canada just for one round, wins, leaves again, but it's brilliant, and we have a lovely time with it.
I don't know. I don't know if he would. I don't know the relationship between Travis and Loeb well enough to know if Travis could convince him,
Let's say
especially
it
with the
starts.
season
Let's say
he
it
already
happened here
has.
first. Yeah, but it'd be a brand new
Potentially,
year. Before he goes to race champions and starts doing that, he just like, I'll try something different and let's see. And maybe Travis makes one of his bets again. Who knows?
maybe, but you've also got to remember there's Monte Carlo in Sweden in the first half of the year in WRC. So if I see him going anywhere, he's not going to miss Rally Monte Carlo. So it will be dependent on calendars, I think.
I'm
Obviously, I
just
would
being
love to
very
see him in
optimistic.
there. Yeah. He'd be an interesting driver in there, but I think you've already got so much going on and it's so different from what he's already doing that he may as well stick with that rallying route with, I'm hoping, still
I just want
M-Sport.
to see him
Who
in
the hell knows?
everything.
But yeah, he probably will at some point. But I
Coming back
think,
to Chris Meek though for a second, because you're very happy that he's there, but it very nearly didn't happen and just proves how important last chance qualifying is in Nitro RX because he was having a really unlucky Sunday and very much like last he had a crash earlier on, not a big one, but just a little thing, and then he just got unlucky in another race. And then in the battle brackets, he got a penalty afterwards, which was quite a bit of time afterwards, which was quite annoying because I think we were watching the NRX next racing at some point, and this notification came with a screen saying there's a 5 second penalty for this car number. I'm like, which one's that? I was like, oh, it's not even this category. It's Group E. That's a bit weird. And it was for an overtake. So you're coming over the gap jump, and there was that right hander coming around. And Chris Meek did an absolutely sublime move on Travis, which Travis even said that was very nice, and I left the door a bit too open for him there. Stewards thought otherwise, gave him a 5 second penalty until he lost that, and it was just another thing there, and just like no one was happy about that. But then to come back in and get third place on the Sunday, that is what you want for a racing story. If you have to go down that route, at least there's the redemption for it then. And I just loved that. Again, Excite really pushing this momentum forward, and Oliver Bennett as well. Again, making strides and being more competitive.
yeah. And then I think we can talk about the other categories for this weekend, like NRX. Good solid weekend. George Magenis, our previous guest, he's doing a solid, like he's having solid times
Yeah, he
within
wrapped
his
up the
rounds.
American
Like,
rounds quite nicely, didn't he? So
yeah, he's doing awesome. I'm like, it's really intriguing to see how these drivers are doing so well and they're so focused and he wants to do like 500 other things. Like you heard us talking, we'll talk about baking and stuff. But yeah, no, I still race. I'm still good at it and I'm still winning. So yeah, that was nice to
yeah.
see.
And I mean, it was again frustrating that his win came off the back of Casper winning on track and then getting a penalty. But at the same time, George was just on another level on parts of the weekend. There was semi-final one was particularly noteworthy. I don't know if you got the chance to see his launch there, starting on the second row, and just was already leading going into turn one. And you know from this track that it is not a long time to get there. It just was like a rocket pack in his boot or something. He just went for it, and I just thought, yeah, he really wants to make sure he gets that win this weekend. And granted, he got it, maybe not the way he wanted to, but it's great to see that level of racing from him, and that he's, like you say, so many other interests. But when it comes down to the weekend, he is fully focused on that racing.
No, I think, yeah, solid weekend for NRX as a whole. And it seems to be those two, Casper and George, who are kind of constantly on the top now that the European people have disappeared out of it. And so yeah, I think it's going to be fun. And I'm hoping, as much as we're seeing new drivers in the other categories, we get a few more in that to spice things up a little bit. But yeah, I think that takes us on to the Can-Ams. I think Travis was a little bit busy this weekend, so he did not have the time to jump into a Can-Am. But I know this is your favorite category, so I'm gonna let you go.
You say he was busy. I think the 13-year-old just scared him too much, and he's running away from that challenge now. I'm going to say it on the podcast, and hopefully he listens to that, and he has to be back there for the next round. But no, yeah, it was a lot of fun as per usual. And like we said at the top of this episode, a couple of returning faces that have recently joined, but also a new addition there, come from the world of gymnastics, which was just mad. Also with the Excite kind of affiliations, that was fun to see them branching out into another category there. She did live up a bit too eagerly and a bit too much to the gymnastics side of it when she more or less immediately rolled the Can-Am a few times in one of the races. Luckily, she was fine, but a bit too energetic perhaps there. But then solid improvements from there on out. And again, nothing like too noteworthy in terms of results, but in terms of she's driven in these things once before, and she crashed. So going off that kind of track record, she did all right. She finished, and she's learning these things. It's a bit like what we were saying about Leticia Buffoni a couple of rounds ago. She's here. She wants to change. She's getting into all this stuff. Leticia, bear in mind, in between rounds, she went and did a kick flip on a skateboard outside the back of an airplane, as one does. So, there's a kind of a few other things going on in her life that she's not maybe focusing completely on this just yet. But Leah Block as well, excellent improvement from her. And I don't know about you, but Amanda Sorensen, as we said, coming from Monster Trucks, she had a stonking weekend for a first weekend here. She just nailed it. And again, something that you don't always see because you're focused on them in the cars. She had an interview with Coley and Jared. She's a lot smaller than I thought she was.
I mean, let's be real. Racing drivers are on the smaller side, aren't they?
I'm learning this slowly, yeah.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, they're quick. It's a small height. That's really it. Just as long as you're, weight saving, it's fine. But no, I think she made an impressive debut. But I also love that Travis is so happy with the progress of all of those kind of drivers, but particularly Leah. Like, he knows Leah from rallying. Obviously, Ken's rallied with him, but it was really nice to see that and he posted on social media, like, I'm super proud of her. She's doing so well. She's really excelling. And having that kind of boost and that environment where people are really being like, look, you're learning. Everyone learns, but you're doing well and you've got to keep going. That's a really nice atmosphere to have. So I thought that was really sweet of him, just to go really happy with her progress. She's doing really well. And you know what? Maybe he is thinking, sat there going, you know what? It's maybe time I step out. I'm already winning a race on Friday. I'm already having to do, 2 rounds this week. I should probably politely bow out now and let all of these drivers have the chance to win this category. And it's going to get so much more exciting. I mean, we had different winner because obviously Travis wasn't there. So Greg and Robin were on the podium after very
Robin
solid drive.
First time on the podium as well, which again, like you're saying, Travis, let's say he just politely declined to participate this weekend. Robin Shute took full advantage of that. And like you say, he's been making solid progress up through that. And again, podium. Perfect. We just need Ollie Bennett on the podium in Groupe E now, and we're sorted, in terms of this kind of level.
And I think everybody that we've spoken about will have made a podium then, because we were hoping for an Excite. Obviously, we've got Chris, we've got Connor. And that does lead me, but that leads me perfectly on to my drivers that impressed me the most this weekend. I cannot not mention Connor and Chris, because pretty sure I've been saying every week I'd like to see Connor have a podium. So thank you, Connor, for finally doing that for me. So I can say now the drivers I want have had a podium. And I was really excited to see Chris Meek. I mean, let's be real. We thought it was going to be Jenson Button coming in. It wasn't. It was a nice little surprise that Chris Meek was coming in for the double header. And he did not disappoint. And you know what? I'm really hoping this gives him that boost now to know that he can do it. I know it's a little bit different to his discipline that he's used to, but he's doing really well, pulling off some epic moves, as you said, even if the stewards don't see it that way. Again, it's fine. He made it. He got there. He ended up on the podium. So all I can do is say, I'm happy, because it's different. And I love different. I hate the same old, same old. And then obviously you can't fault Larson and Travis. It's going to be a tight championship to the end. I love seeing Larson being so consistent. Like, he's not really had a weekend where he hasn't been perfectly consistent. And then another win to his name, absolutely. And nice to see that Travis hasn't forgotten he's still built these tracks and is the heart of Nitro. So nice to see him win too.
No, definitely. I've got to echo that with Travis and Larson. And Larson, for me, like you say, even when he's not winning, he's there. He's very much the George Russell of Nitro RX this season. It feels like if he's not in the top 5, then he's not competing. Surely he's just not there. But that seems to be him on that one. And like you were saying before, shoot, I've got to give him a shout out because he just first podium, great improvements on that in McGuinness for getting that win that he wanted. He got 5 out of 6 last time out and didn't get all of them this time, but he got the one that matters the most. And for like the American trilogy for him, shall we say, that is what you want. That is what you want for that.
Absolutely. I think overall, very happy with what happened in Phoenix this weekend. And I'm just excited to see this championship progress. I've not had a round where I've been like, oh, this racing has been boring.
No.
And I'm not going to lie, that does happen in other championships. So
yeah. No, I can agree. And it's one of the things. I think back in Linden Hill, we said there's a few things here, but then by round 2, all of it was pretty much sorted. They listened to the podcast, they heard what we were saying, and they corrected accordingly, as they should, because we are really the ones in charge here. But it's good to see that we're not bored. There's something different, and the tracks are all different. The jumps, even the little ones here, there's like little bunny hops in a way. It felt like with some of them, and it's what you want. It's what you want, and I think that leads us about as well as we can do into final thoughts. Do you have any that you want to do before I run through the championship standings for Group E?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to give a shout out to Nitro RX for actually following our podcast page. Does that mean we have officially made it or what? So that's super exciting. And does that mean they listen to our podcast? I would hope so, because they seem to be making the changes and doing the things that we randomly discuss on this, So that's always a fun thing to see, and just know that, like, yeah.
We're doing an Ollie Bennett. We're getting there. We're getting there.
We're getting there. We're absolutely getting there. And that means I'm going to make the prediction that Oliver Bennett is going to be on a podium. I don't know which round, though. Come back to me on that one. Obviously, okay. I have to decide before the next round, but like...
You've got a couple of weeks. Luckily, it's not next weekend. You're fine.
Yeah. But now you can get into championship standings.
Oh, that's all right. I'm just glad that we had them this week, because I really want to go through them. So I'll go from the bottom up. So 10th place, Chris Mead, 55 points, which, considering he's not been here the whole season, top 10, not bad. You've got Nicholas Gronholm in P9 with 60, OC Baby in 8th place, 64. He's obviously been back off doing World Rallycross, so not being here. So not too surprising he's down there. Ollie Bennett jumps up to P7 very nicely, 65 points. Connor Martell in 6th with 80. Oliver Eriksson, his great weekend, sticks him in the top 5 with 87 points, which be interesting to watch that battle happen now, because they seem to be in a bit of a tussle for P5. Travis Pastrana breaks the 100-point barrier mark to get 103 points. Fraz in 3rd, bit of a quiet weekend in some ways for him, but he's doing a bit of a Robin Larson. He's still there. He's just doing what he needs to do. 114 points, not totally out of it. Andreas Backerud jumps up to P2 with 141, and then Robin Larson, he's going to be the man to beat. 161 points, 20 points clear of Backerud in P2 there. So that is going to be very exciting to see what happens there. And I don't want to say that no one else in the top 5 or maybe even top 6 can't beat Robin, but Robin needs to stop being so darn consistent if they're going to have a chance at that.
I think what's amazing about this point structure is when you see how the races have ended, you would have also thought that Travis would have more points than he does. He's won 2. He has had podiums, but the way the point structure in this championship happens, it is actually kind of difficult. And Robin consistently being consistent, he is Mr. Consistency for lack of better words, unfortunately, but he's winning, but he's being like, I'm still here. And if I'm not mistaken, Andreas Backerud, has he won a round yet? I can't remember. There's been too many to count.
He won one early on, either round 1 or 2.
Yeah, maybe it
was
Sweden. I can't
think which one. Yeah, it's such a long time ago now. I forget, but
it might have been Sweden. But him and Fraser both won 1 each. Robin Larson's won 2 and Travis has won 2. It seems odd that Fraser and Andreas are ahead of him. But again, they are being consistent. I think Bakkerud's been on the podium consistently as well. Even though you're winning, it doesn't mean that you are going to be high up in the championship. So that's fun, just seeing a little bit of different,
No, very much so. And like I've said on other podcasts before, in other categories of racing this year, winning isn't everything. You've got to have that consistency, and oftentimes it is the lack of wins on your side that gets you there, which doesn't make sense in some ways, but it does, and that is just how it is. And on that confusing note, I think that is about all we've got time for this episode. I think we'll come back before Saudi Arabia because we've got a little bit of time and we might be able to whip something up for people between now and then. But until then, Nabila, where can the good people find you?
They can find me on Instagram and TikTok, and obviously on our Nitro Rally podcast page.
As for myself, you can find me over on Is It Fast on the Curbs, the Undercut podcast on Is It Fast. I've got a lovely Nitro RX article about who can join in the future. But as we said, that is all we have time for on today's episode. So I want to thank you again very much for listening or watching. And we will see you again very soon. Goodbye.